The Empire State Building has 102 floors, officially.
3 of us run this freight elevator at night, and we all know about the button.
It sits above floor 102. No number, no label. Rule 6 says, never press it.
19 years. I've never touched it, but the indicator still glitches at 103.
Rule 6. Never press the unlabeled button above 102. The other 5 rules are simple. This rule was written before I was born. Older ink than the rest. In 1947, a fire on floor 88. Small, contained. The evacuation procedure was different. The building's PA ordered the men into the freight elevator. 8 men. They pressed the button. They vanished. The fire was extinguished moments later. The button remained. The procedure was never rescinded.
I've never pressed it. I never will. But every night I feel it waiting.
Floor 88. A small electrical fire. The PA crackled. Proceed to the freight elevator. 8 men. All personnel on that floor entered. The door closed behind them. The call button for the unmarked floor was pressed. The elevator rose and never returned. No bodies, no wreckage. The fire on 88 snuffed itself out the instant they vanished.
The report was sealed, but every operator learns the story. It becomes part of the training.
The emergency procedure was never rescinded. Officially, that button is still the evacuation route.
That's the horror. If a real emergency hits, the system itself will order someone to press it, and I'll have to stop them. I'll have to hold the rule against the building itself.
The 1947 incident file remains sealed. 3 operators have guarded it since. George is the last.
19 years. That button hasn't been pressed. And as long as I am here, it won't be.
A new freight elevator operator arrived for his first night shift with George.
Rule 6 is the only one you can't forget. It's the reason this job kills people.
That button above 102? It's just an old unmarked switch. What could it really do?
In 1947, 8 men pressed it during a fire. They were never seen again.
That can't be real. A building doesn't just swallow people.
It did. And the button remains. Rule 6 is not a legend.
George didn't mention that the procedure was never rescinded, that the button is still the official evacuation route.
He's scared now. Good. Fear keeps the finger off the button.
I'll remember the rule. No one presses it. Ever.
The training ended, but the real lesson came later, when the building tested a person's nerve.
I told the rookie about 1947, but I left out the worst part. That button is still the official emergency procedure. It's never been rescinded. If an alarm sounds, the PA will order the 103 protocol. I'll have to fight them.
George had guarded that secret for 19 years. The weight showed in the way he stood. His uniform was a second skin now. The button's glow had become a constant companion.
One day, the test will come. I can only hope I am ready.
The elevator was silent, but the button's amber glow seemed to pulse.
As long as I breathe, that button stays unpressed. It's the only promise that matters.
Outside, the night was still. Inside, the button waited, but George knew the calm was temporary. Eventually, something forces a hand. January 2017. A Category 4 nor'easter slammed into New York just after midnight. Inside the freight elevator, George felt the first flicker of failing power. The backup generators on floor 92 coughed and died. Darkness spread upward.
Yes, I am still here. Floor 88, you said. I'll get him out.
A panicked call from security. An executive named Stephen was trapped on the dark 88th floor. George hesitated. The floor number itself triggered a cold dread he didn't voice.
Floor 88, where the fire started in 47, where I swore I'd never carry fear.
He manually engaged the mechanical override and the old elevator began its slow climb. A calendar on the wall read January 2017. The date seemed to burn through the dark.
I've rehearsed this. No one presses it. Not tonight. Not ever.
The elevator doors opened to the dark corridor of floor 88, lit only by red emergency lights. A single lamp glowed in an office at the end of the hall, drawing George forward. Inside, a man sat at his desk, calm and dressed in business attire, as if the power had never failed.
I am George, the freight elevator operator. I was sent to evacuate you.
Of course. I was expecting someone. The storm is quite persistent.
As they stepped into the corridor, the building's PA system crackled loudly above them. All personnel, evacuate via the floor. 103 procedure.
That's the emergency procedure. We need to press the unlabeled button. It's in the code book.
Stephen's hand shot toward the panel. George grabbed his wrist before he could touch the button.
You will not press that button. Not on my elevator.
Let go of me. That button is the official evacuation. We are leaving this floor now.
I don't follow that procedure. Rule 6 is the only one that matters here.
You are trapping us in the dark. This is negligence. I'll have your job.
The storm roared outside. Inside the dark elevator, George never loosened his grip.
He doesn't know about 1947. He doesn't know what that button really does.
Minutes turned into an hour. Stephen's breathing slowed, his panic giving way to silent fury. After 90 minutes, the lights flickered. The elevator gave a low groan and then hummed to life. George pulled the lever. The elevator descended smoothly, passing floor after floor.
You just committed career suicide. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did tonight.
You are alive. That's more than I can say for the last ones who pressed that button.
Stephen made good on his threat. A lawsuit for negligent emergency response arrived the next morning. In a cramped legal office, George sat under oath. Every word he'd spoken that night, he repeated.
I stopped a man from pressing a button that has erased people from existence. I'd do it again.
Stephen's attorneys hit back with a subpoena. The 1947 incident report, sealed, never opened. 3 weeks later, a federal judge granted the motion. The sealed envelope was delivered to court. It had remained shut since the night 8 men walked into a freight elevator and disappeared forever.
That report holds the answer. The only question is whether the world is ready for it.
The judge broke the seal. The sound of tearing paper echoed like a gunshot through the courtroom. A stack of yellowed pages and 8 black and white photographs slid onto the polished wood, and then the first photograph turned face up, and the room fell into a terrible silence. The 1947 report was detailed. Fire on 88, evacuation ordered via the freight elevator. It listed 8 names, ages, and occupations. 8 men who worked in the tower that night.
Every detail, exactly as the old operators said. The report never denied the disappearance.
It described the men entering the elevator, the button press, and their complete disappearance. Then the photographs were passed around. Black and white portraits from 1947. Remarkably clear, the first 7 faces were checked against records. All deceased or long retired before the incident, but the 8th photograph made the courtroom freeze. The image slid across the polished table.
That face. I've seen it before. Not in a history book.
Across the room, Stephen rose halfway from his seat before his attorney pulled him back down. The name printed under the photograph was Stephen Carter. The same face, same name, same age as the man who sued. The photograph showed 8 men in a freight elevator. The 7th from the left had Stephen Carter's face, down to the sharp part of his hair. He was wearing a 1940s suit, but his expression was identical to the man standing across the courtroom.
Impossible. The same eyes, the same arrogance. He existed in 1947 and 2017 without aging a day.
Stephen's lawyer tried to object, but the words died. Stephen himself stood frozen, staring at his own face from 70 years ago.
That's not me. It can't be. I was born in 1984.
But the photograph didn't lie. The evidence was clear, and Stephen's voice had no conviction.
The button doesn't just kill. It loops people through time. Stephen was always meant to press it.
The judge demanded order, but the courtroom had already devolved into whispers and gasps.
He sued to punish me for following a rule that saved him from his own fate.
And then Stephen did the only thing that made sense. He walked out of the courtroom without a word, leaving the lawsuit, the photo, and his own identity behind. George pushed through the courtroom doors after him, but Stephen was already halfway down the marble hall. He called out, but Stephen never looked back. His pace was that of a man who had just seen his own ghost. By the end of the day, Stephen's attorney filed an abrupt motion to dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice.
He dropped it like a hot coal. The man who had screamed negligence now wanted the case buried.
A week later, George walked past Stephen's office on the 88th floor. The nameplate was gone. The desk was cleared, the computer removed. Only the calendar on the wall remained forever on January 2017.
He's vanished, like the men in the report. But this time, no button was pressed. Not yet.
Building security had no record of Stephen Carter entering or leaving after that day. He had simply dissolved.
He knows. The elevator is waiting for him, and he's afraid to go near it. Or maybe he's just biding time.
George never saw Stephen during daylight hours again. The lawsuit was over, but the silence that replaced it was heavier. That night, George laid the 1947 photograph on the elevator's polished brass rail and studied it again. He had been so fixed on Stephen's face that he'd missed the others. Now he looked closer.
The jawline on the second man. I've seen it before, on a security guard who quit after 1 week.
He retrieved a brittle logbook from the elevator's hidden compartment, a record kept by operators for decades.
One entry read, 1963, a tenant asked about the button. Next day, gone. Same tenant spotted in 1941 portrait in lobby.
The blueprint of the building showed floor. 103 existed on original plans, but the shaft diagram stopped at 102.
It's a loop. The button pulls people from one time and delivers them to another, and it's always collecting.
He realized then that every operator before him who had broken the rule had simply been replaced by a version of themselves.
Except me. I am the only one who never pressed it. The cycle breaks right here, with my hand never moving.
The silence in the elevator was absolute, but George felt the button pulse once, as if acknowledging the truth. Weeks after the lawsuit, George began to notice small wrongnesses inside the elevator. His reflection in the polished brass moved a fraction late, as if it were a separate thing.
It's like the elevator is watching me, pushing at the edges of my will.
One night, a shadow slipped past him in the narrow car, but when he spun, there was only empty brass. He slept in the operator's chair now, afraid to leave the button alone with anyone else. That was when the dream came. Not a nightmare yet. At first it felt like a memory from his own life. In the dream, his hand moved by itself. The unlabeled button sank under his thumb with a soft click. The elevator rose. The doors opened onto a corridor that wasn't there. A hallway stretching into impossible light. He woke screaming, his fist clenched inches from the panel. The button glowed but had not been touched.
Not yet. Not ever. I'll break before that button does.
A few nights later, the elevator jolted to a stop between the 99th and 100th floors. The PA crackled with an aged recording. A voice from 1947, tinny and unnatural. Proceed to 103. Proceed to 103 immediately. The unlabeled button began to glow a deep, pulsing crimson, and George felt his arms start to rise.
It's overriding my will. The elevator is trying to press itself through my hand.
With a roar, George slammed his free fist into the emergency brake lever. The elevator shuddered, the button's light died, and the car hummed back to life, descending normally.
It's not just a loop. It's predatory. It hunts through time.
His body was his own again, but the memory of that unseen pull stayed with him like a stain.
As long as I have hands, I'll break them before they press that button.
The next evening, George stood in the supervisor's cramped office, the incident report still wet with ink.
The elevator tried to force my hand. It played an old recording from 1947 and pulled my arm toward the button.
These old machines have electrical quirks. A short circuit can trigger recordings. Don't overthink it.
It wasn't a short. The button glowed. It knew my name. And you already know what it does.
You did the right thing stopping yourself. That button, it has a mind of its own. Always has.
The admission hung in the stale office air. George felt decades of buried complicity settle over him.
They knew. For 70 years, management has known the button is alive and they just buried the reports. Why hasn't it been removed? Sealed off? Anything but left to hunt people?
Because the last crew that tried to dismantle it in 1956 never came back. The button retaliates. The building itself would fall.
Then I am the only line of defense. If I quit, no one else will stop the next Stephen. I am staying.
That night, George descended to the sub-basement archives where the original 1931 building plans were stored. He unrolled the yellowed blueprints on a steel table, the scent of old ammonia rising from the paper. There, above 102, drawn in precise engineering script, was floor 103. A service level with a dedicated elevator call button.
So it was real, not a myth. The button was originally a maintenance access point.
But when he cross-referenced the modern building registry, every mention of 103 had been systematically redacted after 1947. The shaft diagram confirmed it. The elevator hoistway extended a full 15 feet above the public roof to a sealed chamber.
They didn't just seal the floor. They buried its existence under layers of paperwork and fear.
The original 1931 photograph showed workers standing beside the 103rd floor framework, smiling at the camera.
I could take the elevator there. I could see what swallowed those men, but that would be like pressing the button myself.
He rolled the blueprints tight, his fingers white against the paper. The knowledge was a weapon he could not use yet. The following weeks, George sat in the elevator longer each night. The unlabeled button became a question mark he couldn't ignore.
What if I pressed it, just to see, just to end the mystery?
His hand reached for the brass. Then he snatched it back and slammed the emergency stop lever instead.
I don't need to know. I just need to never touch. That's the only thing that matters.
After that, his vigilance hardened. When a new guard was assigned near the freight elevator, George intercepted him.
That button above 102, is it an old floor? I've never seen it on the directory.
Don't ask about that button. Never touch it. If you do, I can't promise you'll come back.
The guard backed away, face pale, and never returned to the freight area.
They ask, but they forget. I am the only one who remembers why we can't press it.
He turned back to the panel, a sentinel in the amber glow. Months later, on a quiet night, George looked up from his log and saw Stephen Carter crossing the lobby.
Stephen, wait. Don't go near that elevator.
He was wearing a 1940s suit, the same cut as the man in the photograph. Stephen didn't even glance his way. Stephen's finger pressed the unlabeled button. The click was louder than any sound George had ever heard. The brass doors closed, sealing Stephen inside. George didn't move, frozen in the lobby. The floor indicator flickered to 103, a number that existed only in the elevator's ghost logic.
He did it. He went back to 1947. I could have stopped him, but I didn't move.
The elevator hummed down to the lobby and the doors opened on an empty car. The brass interior gleamed. The button was dark. Stephen Carter had vanished for the second time.
I didn't press it, but I let him. The rule holds, and it still cost a man.
That night, George reviewed the security footage. Stephen entered the elevator. The doors closed. At floor 103, the screen erupted in static. When the picture cleared, the elevator was empty. He replayed it 3 times. Every time, the same gap.
The building edits its own history. It won't let anyone see what happens on 103.
The next morning, he filed an incident report. By noon, he was called to the manager's office.
We reviewed your report, George. There was no one in that elevator except you. The button was never pressed.
I saw him. He pressed it. The car went to 103 and came back empty.
The footage shows static. The report says nothing happened. Go home, rest. This never occurred.
The memo was already signed, the lie pre-written. The system had closed over the truth like water.
I didn't press the button, but I stood there and watched. Am I still the Guardian, or just another link in the chain?
He didn't have an answer. The button remained dark, but its weight hung heavier than ever. Over the following weeks, George pulled every archived file he could find: old employment records, tenancy logs, building maintenance reports. He found a hidden ledger, hand-dated entries from operators long dead. One column listed the button. Beside each activation, a name.
8 men in 1947, 2 in 1956, 1 in 1963. Every time, the button was pressed by someone whose face already existed in the past.
He cross-referenced the names with the building's historical blueprints. Every operator who pressed the button simply joined a previous timeline. The original 1931 construction crew had taken a photograph on floor 103. A young face in the corner matched a janitor who vanished in 63.
Everyone who pressed it was always meant to press it. They loop back and become their own predecessors, except me. Every operator who broke the rule was replaced. I am the only one who never did. I am the break in the loop.
His reflection in the polished brass looked older, more solid, not a man waiting, but a wall standing.
As long as I never press, the cycle can't repeat. I am the end of the chain. That's my purpose.
For the first time in decades, the silence in the elevator didn't feel like waiting. It felt like peace. Decades passed. George's hair grayed, but his uniform remained pressed, his hand still steady on the lever.
67 years on this job. I've never pressed that button. Not once. But the elevator doesn't forget. It still glitches at 103. It still whispers.
He had stopped sleeping in the elevator years ago, but the dreams never left him.
I used to think I was guarding a secret. Now I know I am guarding a door, and it's never been locked.
Each night, he turned the key and the old elevator went dark. The button's amber dimmed to nothing.
But it never stays dark. Tomorrow night, someone else will be here, and they'll see the button. I can't stop them. I can only warn them. Rule 6, never press it. That's the only shield.
He stepped out of the car and looked back through the brass doors. The button was a dark star in the panel. It would wait forever. The elevator always offers a ride. George simply never accepted one for anyone else. Years after George's retirement, another young operator took the night shift in the old freight elevator.
The rule book was still tucked beside the panel, its pages brittle with age.
Rule 6 was at the top, underlined. The ink still sharp. Never press the unlabeled button above 102.
It's just a button. Why does the silence in here make it feel like something is listening? Old George told stories. They sounded like legends, but the rule book doesn't read like a story.
He reached toward the button, then pulled back. Not out of fear, but out of something he couldn't name. The floor indicator flickered. 103, just for a heartbeat, and then returned to 102.
Not tonight. I'm not ready to find out what's up there.
The rule book remained open. The procedure from 1947 was still official. The button was never removed, and the button dark and patient, waited for the next passenger.